Hey there, rock and roll podcast fans. This is Mike Hoban. Welcome to Rat Tales, the podcast that brings you the music and stories of the Boston rock scene that grew out of the mid-'70s at the Rat and some of the other hellhole joints, each with their own sick charm.
I couldn't crash a party, so I broke down and I cried. If I tried to hitchhike, you're the type don't give a ride. But I've got pride to, I've been lied to, maybe more than you. I'm the one got busted on the rider that you threw. Making sane the thought that I got nothing else to do but listen to the words that only come from just a few. But I can dream to, I can scream to, sound just like a band. I'll do what I can do and take the thorn out of your hand.
That was Maybe More Than You by The Lost, one of the first bands to play at the Boston Tea Party after it opened on January 20th, 1967. Now we're going to the Boston Tea Party marker ceremony that took place June 10th, 2014. It features remarks from the folks over there like Orpheus Harry Sandler, sound engineer Dinky Dawson, Robin Lane's drummer Tim Jackson, and Jay Giles' singer P. Wolf. Interviews were later done by Gary Summers.
Hi, I'm Gary Summers. I was a production manager here from 1984 till 1991. I showed up for my first day because I heard there was cool stuff happening here. Moved here from Wisconsin. This is the place to be. Metro was my club. And the opening day, the first day I showed up, Joe Perry Project was playing. It was 1984. And I just showed up and they didn't have anybody in charge, really. So I started pushing showcases, display cases, band gear, started pushing the gear. At the end of the night, I was in charge. It was just one of those kind of freaky moments. I actually stopped Pat Lyons from coming into his own club because I didn't know who he was. After that, I came and produced many shows, probably 300 to 500 shows here. Everything from the Rumbles to Prince, Eric Clapton, the Allman Brothers. Some of my favorites, of course, Stevie Ray Vaughan. But my favorite thing about this place is Patrick would ask us to renovate the entire place pretty much overnight. And we would. Stephen Boros, who was the kind of the artist in residence, and his dog Bertha were always here. And we would have to kind of repaint the place, rewire the place, change the stage from this side to that side as quick as possible. My favorite one was when we converted Metro to City. City Club's opening night was redecorated to be the Normandy. They wanted the City Club to look like the Normandy when they walked in. And the first celebrity playing the show, the club, the new club, was a guy named Cab Calloway. Cab Calloway didn't fit into this rock and roll environment, but this place was decked out to be the Normandy. Really fancy schmancy. Cab Calloway, this is like my favorite story of this venue. Cab Calloway shows up for the sound check. He shows up, and here's the band on stage, all ready to go, and he had performed with them on a cruise, so he knew him. He was 84 years old. He walked up on stage, said, "Minnie," bam, they went right into it. He'd shake his hand, "That's enough." He'd go, "Caledonia," boom, they go right into it. So as soon as they finish the sound check and Mr. Calloway is happy, I says, "Would you like me to get the limo to take you back to your hotel?" He goes, "No, man, can I just hang out here with you? Got any weed?" So I arranged for Mr. Calloway to have as much weed as he wanted, and he hung out with me for like 4 hours. And afterwards, he went to get dinner, came back and did an unbelievable, about 75-minute set. Fully animated, extremely excited, and it was probably one of the greatest shows I ever saw here, and I saw a lot. I really enjoyed working here for the Lions, for Don, and for all those great groups, and I really appreciate the diversity of the type of and quality of talent that I got to work with.
Good evening, everybody. I'd like to welcome everyone here tonight. A lot of stuff is going to go down here tonight. We're going to step back in time a little bit. pay a little recognition to some people. A lot of stuff has happened in this building, whether it was the era that I know a little bit about, Boston Tea Party. I used to be the announcer at the Tea Party, so I can speak to the fact that we definitely threw down a little bit. So, so a lot of people got stuff to say. So I'm not going to take up too much time, but I want everyone to hang out, relax, and have a really good time tonight. So I'm going to turn it over to my man Steve. So let's have a nice round of applause for Steve Nelson.
Of course, Charles is modest in terms of saying he, introduced a few shows. He was the face and voice of the Tea Party. Nobody got to go on stage before he gave him the intro. So, thank you. Nice to be in that company. I left my guitar home, but that's the way it is. I'd like to thank you, everybody, for coming. The Music Museum of New England has started a project you probably know called the Boston Music Trail, putting markers around different places in town that were of musical significance. We did one at the apartment that Aerosmith lived in Brighton about a year and a half ago. The city of Boston was nice enough to shut down ComAv, shut down the team, let them play on the street. We didn't get quite that far, but thanks to Don for his hospitality for making this space available to us. And I know a lot of people, some people here have traveled a long way to come here, both geographically and I think going back into time. So I'm just going to bring on some people here to talk about various aspects of what went on here. I mean, it's absolutely right, as you said. This building is probably, from a standpoint of clubs in Boston, the most historic place. I mean, it's a different building, but it's certainly the most historic location in Boston. There have been clubs here since early 1969. You're going to hear from Gerd Stern, who was the president of Intermedia Systems, who basically was responsible for the ARC. I got brought in, I forget by whom, somebody took me over to this garage on Lansdowne Street to say, we're going to build this great club here. And I walked in, and it's this really disgusting garage, taxi garage. There's oil all over the floor. And I kind of went, what? I mean, this really didn't seem very likely. 3 months later, these people, as I call them, the Archeans, they descended from space, completely converted this place, and it was never the same. And it's been really, except for the time when this building was under reconstruction, it's really been in continuous operation as a club pretty much for all that time, which is pretty remarkable. So I just want to introduce Harry Sandler, who is my co-conspirator with the Music Museum. And he's going to talk a little bit about our website and what we're doing there. That is the Music Museum right now, other than a few markers, which we're going to see one here. So Harry, your turn.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you. You know, when we started this project 8 years ago, we thought of it as a sort of a three-pronged attack, and I'm going to work it backwards. Really, we want to end up with an actual brick-and-mortar museum. I mean, Boston and New England has got a tremendous amount of music that has come out of here, and a lot of you have seen these shows going back over many years. The second part of that attack was to do these markers and do exhibits to actually pay homage to all of that. And the first part of our attack was to really put up a very comprehensive website. And so we've been working slowly over the last several years, and there's really, we couldn't put up this website without the people I'm about to thank. So I kind of want to start off with Wayne Ulecki, who is really a founder of our mission, gave us a donation. Wayne was the bass player in the Beacon Street Union, and he saw the vision years ago, and he was fantastic. Without Carl Tortola and without Linda Lyman and Steve Haig, we wouldn't have a website. They have been our web team, and they have found us everything. Carl right here, Linda is floating around over there. we couldn't do it. I mean, it's growing all the time, and everybody's contributing. Ed Simkus, one of our writers, keeps on giving us bio after bio after bio, and Linda and Carl keep putting all this material up. Carter, you just did a wonderful job in giving us a whole slew of information on the BCN team, and I mean, that's all a part of everything. So, you know, without all of that, we couldn't be what we are. Without your contributions, without your help, without all of the information that you send us, we can't document everything. So thank you. Keep it coming at us. The more you give us, the more we're going to put up, and eventually it's going to ultimately show everything that has gone on in New England music. So thank you so much, Steve.
I can't find the time to tell you. I can't find the time to tell you. So many things to say, I could fit them in a book, fit them in a book of 1,000 pages, yeah. So many people say that I couldn't tell a lie, couldn't tell a lie in 1,000 pages. Baby, baby, you're right. Ba-da-da-da-da-da-da, I can't find the time to tell you.
You know, Harry talked about the volunteers like Carl and Linda. This is all a volunteer effort. You know, what we like to think of as a labor of love, because we just all remember all this great music that went down and, want to preserve it. However, besides volunteers, sometimes it does take a little money. And we were fortunate enough to get a grant from Ernie Bach Jr.'s Music Drives Us Foundation for the Music Trail Project. Ernie was going to be here, but he had to get a plane and couldn't quite sandwich this appearance in. However, another plane.
Ba-doom, boom.
However, Music Drives Us has a group of people known as ambassadors, and one of their ambassadors is somebody many of you know, Fred Bermonti, who was the founder and owner of Daddy's Junkie Music, which in its heyday was, probably the greatest music retail operation in the United States, and got recognized as such. So Fred is going to say a few words on behalf of Music Drives Us.
Did you hear that? Greatest in the United States. I'll take it. Anyway, for decades, the name of Ernie Bach has been synonymous with cars. And then when Ernie took over the business, people around New England area got to see that Ernie was more than just cars, that Ernie Bach Jr. was, his soul was in music. Ernie is a guitar player, was a graduate of Berklee College of Music, and was on the board of directors of Berklee College for a number of years. So what Ernie did was he combined his passion for music with the business and ultimately formed this nonprofit called Music Drives Us. And Music Drives Us provides grants to organizations and individuals that have music programs. They provided grants of over $1 million to well over 100 organizations around the area. And it is in large part because of the generosity of Ernie Bach that the Music Museum of New England has been able to put together these events, create these landmarks, and it is very appreciated that Ernie has put himself out there for us and made this continue. So wearing my other hat as a member of the board of directors of the Music Museum of New England, I want to give a sincere thank you to Ernie Bach Jr. And Music Drives Us for their continued support of helping to create these landmarks that will put us all in the position where we get to remember those individuals and those places that have given so much joy to so many around New England. So for all of us, thank you, Ernie.
Here's My Love Is by the Beacon Street Union.
My love is violet blossoms, tender to the touch. You will surrender to me. Within the realm of hearts embracing, don't you realize you're facing ecstasy? My love is sparkling water flowing all around. You soon are going to be drowned. In nightly shadows we'll go stealing signs of loving, now revealing themselves.
That was My Love Is by the Beacon Street Union, one of the many local bands that played the Boston Tea Party in 1967, 1968.
Fred mentioned that he was on the board of MM1. There's a couple of other guys here besides Harry and myself who are also board members. Dave LaCamera and David Bieber. There he is. He's back there. So again, an event for them. Again, this is, people volunteer their time and effort to make this possible. Now, one of the objectives, frankly, now that I can kind of put him on the spot, of the museum is to work more closely with the city of Boston. I think the whole, many of us here have seen how the music business and the arts have blossomed here in Boston over the decades. If you're old enough and you remember, like when I do in that garage, there was a time that Boston wasn't too friendly to music and the arts, and now it's a mecca, and Boston has a new mayor after 5 terms of Mayor Menino and Mayor Walsh, and he has appointed Ken Brissett as his title as Director of Sports, Tourism, and Entertainment, which is a pretty big portfolio. I like to think of him, he doesn't know this, as the Czar of Fun. Because these are all the great things to do, and he's going to help move these forward. So, Ken, a few words?
Thank you. I'm going to go back to the mayor and tell him I have a new name.
Put it on your card.
Put on my card, which I don't even have that yet. I'd like to thank you for having me here. On behalf of the mayor, we're really excited to be partnering with you folks here, and as well as the arts community itself. When the mayor was running, when he was running for mayor, he knew and he had a vision of the arts in Boston. And by doing so, he created a cabinet level for the arts. And we are in the process right now. I know you all know Joyce Linehan, who has been working very hard. She sends her regards tonight, and Tom Johnston as well, who I work very closely with. They're in the process of right now interviewing for that position. In the meantime, I'm actually heading up the actual arts, tourism, and special events. Once we have that arts commissioner, I will be the director of tourism, sports, and entertainment. And that's a really exciting thing because that encompasses, all of those things encompasses economic impact and things that can come to the city. I've been talking with a lot of folks here, and just a history of me, I talk about the music. My grandfather, back in the day, used to have an 18-piece orchestra, and he used to play on the Telegram Gazette up at the top in Worcester, because that's where I grew up. And my uncle used to be the band manager for Zonkaraz, which some of you might remember. So I come from a history of music. I can so appreciate what you're trying to do here, and anything the city can do to help move that along, I think that's fantastic. The stories that all of you can tell in this room, if you could all just write a book, it would be unbelievable. And I really mean that. The stories that you can all tell if you wrote a book. Well,
Oh, you wrote a book.
In there, done that.
wrote it. And the other thing that I think is important too, as I look around the room, I think it's really important that as the group here, you start cultivating younger people to get involved. I think that's really important. You have worked so hard in your lives to bring it where you are right now, and to get these young people who probably don't even know what vinyl is. They have no idea what an 8-track tape, which I still have at my mother's house, where they have a 35 or whatever, but get those young kids involved, and we have so many great schools here with Berkeley, with BU, and get all those kids involved with this, and let's make this really work. Boston is an incredible city. We have such an incredible, powerful story to tell of the history of music, and I commend all of you for doing this today, so thank you for having me.
Okay, now, speaking of stories, now we get to now we've heard from our sponsors, so to speak. We're going to hear from some of the people who were here, who made it happen, who lived through it. And as I mentioned, the first club on this site was the Ark. And, believe it or not, we have with us Gerd Stern, who was the president of Intermediate Systems, which created the entire environment in the Ark. And it's remarkable, there's actually some other people, I believe, here from the Ark as well. So this is going way back in history, and I think Gerd's going to give us some insights into what went into creating this place and what it was all about.
Steve, you're going to have to shut me up because I've got too much to say, right? But it's lovely to be here. I don't believe this place. It's rococo. Like he said, oil on the floor, garage. We turned it into something arty, and sound. But it was a big headache actually, because the money came very slowly from a lot of wonderful people, and Charlie Tebow was somebody who was pregnant with the idea, and there were 5 or 6 other people who came in, and here we have Michael Callahan, who I've worked with since the 60s and still work with. We have Michael Smith from who we worked with in Syosset, right? Is that true? And Walter Gundy, who certainly was very active in the Ark. What was the Ark about? I mean, hark, the Ark, right? It's not the Ark, it's the block, but we called it the Ark. Noah had nothing to do with it, by the way. Anyway, we got it together, and we had 3 or 4 years before that put together the first big media discotheque in Long Island called The World. Why not call it The World? And it was on the cover of Life, so we were lucky. Andy Warhol had competed with us for it, and he lost, but he was very jealous when we hit the cover of Life, because he had that little place on St. Mark's. Anyway, the Ark was the realization of something. I mean, here it was right close to the ballpark, which seemed like a lucky location. Was it? Well, it still is, right? And it's working. I mean, I'm amazed. I haven't been here since it was the Ark, believe it or not. I never was at the Tea Party. Now, the idea of having a club with sound, I started out with a wire recorder 30, 40 years before that, a wire recorder. You guys maybe work with 1/4-inch tape. Well, wire was nothing like that. When wire got tangled you really had a problem. But it recorded sound. And we wound up on Newberry Street with Intermedia Sound, the first 16-track studio in the world. And it was really that studio which was the birthplace of the art, because we recorded many of the groups that you know about. We had gold records. I mean, it was, and we also produced our multimedia shows out of that studio, which was a prodigious benefit. The reason we got that studio is kind of silly, because we took it out of bankruptcy. We had a very young at the time banker who turned out to be a big shot, so that we never knew him after that. But Tom Lee, Tom called us one day and he said, "This guy is going bankrupt with a sound studio on Newberry Street, and you guys better pick it up because General Electric is willing to give it to you." So we took it. The guy made a huge error, because Newberry Street is over the subway. So he had to keep pouring floor after floor after floor to get some sound deadening. And he did. But by the time he finished, he was broke. Were we ever lucky? We had it for quite a few years. Anyway, but the art made perfect sense coming out of Intermedia Sound. And a lot of the groups that we recorded there came to the Ark, at least to dance and play. The other kind of odd thing was, we had heard a lot about Armand Bose, who was at that time the head of the MIT sound department and a big shot, and he had just started making his first speakers. So we needed them, and we bought a whole bunch of them, and when we mounted them, there was practically no bass. What were we going to do? The young guy, Michael, what was the guy's name? Marshall Goldberg.
He's coming next week.
He built us these bass woofers, and we put one bass woofer next to each Bose speaker. Can you imagine what happened at our opening when Armand Bose walked in and saw next to his lovely Queen speakers these woofers? He flipped out. Can you blame him? He was right, but the kind of sound wasn't the sound that he was thinking of, and we needed that bass to be along to beat. Anyway, so that's that story. The Ark was a pleasure to deal with, and a lot of the artists, she used to be Amy, she's now Fiona, she remembers this incredible diffraction sculpture that hung from the ceiling. The people who made diffraction for us in Riderwood, Maryland, were good friends of ours, and they contributed a lot of that wonderful material. Paul Williams, who was a sculptor that we worked with, did things for us. All kinds of lovely artists, sculptors, media people helped us, and it came to be. And it lasted for long enough. If you have any questions, I'll answer them, but I think that's it. At that time, I'm a poet basically, and at that time I had written a mantra which I always say whenever I speak anywhere. I just did it in Jamaica at a poetry festival, but take the no out of now, then take the ow out of now, then take the then out of now, no ow now.
Here's Your Head is Reeling by the Ultimate Spinach.
Come boss tell you what to do. Look out, big brother is looking at you. Look out, big brother is looking at you. Your head is reeling. Your head is reeling.
That was Your Head is Reeling by Ultimate Spinach, another local band that played the Boston Tea Party many times during 67 and 68.
You know, every now and then I think I got a story or two I'd like to tell, but just to continue what that brother was saying about Marshall. Marshall was really a really unique kind of person. He was building them speakers upstairs at the Tea Party. And a lot of the times when there'd be a group playing, Marshall would take someone upstairs to demo the speakers. And sometimes the demonstrations would get so loud that he would drown out the band that was playing upstairs. So that's how a lot of people got introduced to Marshall speakers. And another little flavorful thing to give you a little bit of flavor about the Tea Party then. In the 60s, early 70s, at the Tea Party, when we were lining up out here across from the baseball people, the people who were coming to the Tea Party looked a lot different than the people who were getting ready to go to the game. So it was always kind of a crazy thing to see what was going to happen. And there was a couple motorcycle gangs at that time that were around town. One was the Hells Angels, and the other group was the Devil's Disciples. And I knew some of the people that were in the Devil's Disciples. So whenever the Velvet Underground came to town, it was kind of like a neutral territory so that both motorcycle gangs could come see could come see Velvet Underground without sort of having a war with each other. You did have one motorcycle gang line up on one side of the street, and the other gang would line up on the other side of the street. So at intermission, because I knew some of the disciples, I said, you know, I'd like to say that the last portion of this show has been brought to you by the Devil's Disciples, those notorious young men on their flying machines. So I walked off stage. One of the Devil's Disciples walked up to me and said, "Did you just say something about the Devil's Disciples, man?" I said, "Yeah." And I repeated what I said. And he took out his pistol. He had a pistol. And he pointed the pistol at me. He said, "You know, if you said anything about my brothers, I'll kill you." So about that same time, one of the other disciples came to him and said, No, he said something really cool about us, man. We really like what you said. And he said, "Hey, Blast, I'm really sorry, but he's been tripping for like 4 days, so he doesn't really know what's going on." So he apologized, and everything was cool. So I'll tell you one other little quick story. Then I'll let Don Law come up here and tell you some stuff too. You know, there was a time where we used to basically have shows on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, but every now and then on Sunday we'd have a special show with 2 shows on Sunday, and then even every now and then, once in a while, we'd run 7 days a week. So Delaney and Bonnie was supposed to come in on a Sunday for 2 shows, and they had Eric Clapton playing with them at the time, so everyone wanted to see Eric Clapton. So we had Fleetwood Mac that Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And then we had Joe Wells from the James Gang, who was opening up Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. So Eric came in with Delaney and Bonnie, did the first show, and they were all really tired. So they didn't really go down too well the first show. So they said, you know, for people after the second show, anyone wants to come back, they can come back and check it out. So in the meantime, the people left for the first show, and Eric, he didn't have a chance to really get off, so he started playing his guitar by himself. Meantime, Peter Green was checking it out from the side, watching Eric play. So Eric played for a while, then Peter went and got his axe. My man there can tell you about it. He went and got his axe, and he went out and joined in too. So now you had Eric Clapton and Peter Green jamming on the stage loosely. So, Joe Walsh was in the meantime, he was checking it out. So at some point, Joe went and got his guitar and he jumped out there. In the meantime, the house opened up, everyone came in and sat down. And so by the time the house had filled up, they looked up and saw that there was people there, and people started clapping, and they just walked off, and I came out and said, just in case you're wondering who you just heard to, you had a combination of Clapton, Welsh, and Green. People really freaked out because they said, wow, man, that was really far out. So anyway, that's just a little story about the history of this club. So I'll let my man Don come up here and tell you a little bit more. Thank you.
The Master Blaster is a much better storyteller than I am. I think that this building holds so many memories for all of us. You know, we all had a great deal of fun here. We've seen a lot of changes in the building over time. I think Steve and I are in this position, I think, because of a guy named Ray Repin, who we talked about when we did the dedication of 53 Berkeley Street. But Ray really basically was the guy who had the vision about the ballroom, vision about BCN and HCN and Hartford and the Phoenix newspaper, and he was an interesting personality, which we talked about before, but he was the one behind a lot of what happened during that era. And I think what happened is that we had outgrown our space at 53 Berkeley Street, and clearly the space here became available, and we moved in. And I remember summer of '69, I remember watching the moon landing from inside the building, being absolutely mesmerized by all this. And I also remember one weekend in August where I booked the Birds, and I was, thought, you know, they have this event going on in New York State, but it will be probably just fine. And of course, nobody showed up because everybody went to Woodstock. You know, we had a great deal of fun. I mean, I you know, was awakened in the middle of the night to go open the tea party by my friends at BCN because Dwayne Allman and the rest of the Allman Brothers wanted to come jam. So I had to come open the building so they could play. The remarkable thing, I think, about the ballroom era here in Boston was it was really just 4 years long, which is kind of interesting. And that's probably about what it was in most cities. And if you think about the acts that emerged out of that ballroom era, they're still with us today. I mean, you know, it's still a lot of what's really powerful in terms of music, and that catalog is still so significant to everyone. It was interesting. I was talking to John Higgins, who came today with a poster from the Tea Party, and he presented it to me, and it's Elton John playing here in October of 1970, and it's his first tour, and I think he did this after playing the Playboy Club in New York and the Troubadour in Los Angeles, and I think we played all 3 nights for a third of a house, and we lost our shirt. Nobody cared to see Elton John here first time, which was not unusual, you know, for us to play somebody early in the mix. But it was a great room, and it worked so many times. There were so many. We played the Grateful Dead so often, Velvet Underground. There were so many great memories. And then the interesting thing about it is that after the Tea Party closed, it turned into a disco. It was like, I think Boston, I don't know what the sequence was, Boston Metro. And there was a young guy who was managing it who had run a ballroom in Nantasket Beach, and he wanted to buy Boston. So a bunch of us got together and backed this guy named Pat Lyons. And the idea was not so much that we wanted to do the dance part, we wanted to do the talent. So we stayed in the deal all those years where we did the talent part, which became, you know, Avalon, and it was Metro, and it was Spit, and it was a variety of different names over the years. And I was also around when Isaac Tigret came to town in Huey Long's railroad car that he pulled up to South Station in, and marched over to Harvard and said, Harvard, you should back my new venture called House of Blues. And they obviously, and he was talking to the Harvard Foundation, and he said, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to make this culturally significant art form available to a larger segment. And I'm going to basically do an educational piece to young people in the inner city. And what happened, of course, is he opened up a 200-seat room in Harvard Square that had no chance of survival, and eventually went on to build other rooms elsewhere. And Isaac is a brilliant guy. He's also the guy who started Hard Rock Cafe. He has a heart of gold. And the interesting thing about that is that that foundation actually still continues, and we do 35 a year for inner city kids who come in school buses. And Ernie Bach Jr. actually is part of the sponsor to make that all possible. So, and helping the Blues Forum and continuing to expand that is still very much alive, et cetera. And the room has worked incredibly well, and in fact, this is has the highest attendance of any club in America. But you think about it, this goes back to, was it 68 when they first started? Was it in the Ark? Was that the first year?
January 69.
69.
The Spirit.
Spirit, okay. So that's a long time for this building to go through a lot of very successful, and of course, you know, it's not a logical place to have a venue, the backside of a ballpark with a location where there's no street traffic in the wintertime whatsoever. I found it amusing listening to the story about the audiences in the 60s here, ball fans. We will have a similar problem now on Saturday nights when we have gay night and baseball crowds. The dresses don't go over very well. But I think that coming back to the recognizing the building, you know, it's been a terribly important icon for so many different kinds of musical, you know, formats, and it's been, you know, it's terrific that Steve Nelson and the rest of your board has finally done something, and we're very appreciative of the fact that something's going to happen. So, thank you.
Here's Walkin' and Singin' by Ill Wind.
I woke up this morning and the day was clear and fine. I didn't go to work, I went out just to ease my mind. I was walking and singing and listening to those bells ring. I saw children playing, looking like they owned the earth. I saw a happy woman as to a child she gave birth. I was walking and singing and listening to those bells ring.
That was Walkin' and Singin' by Ill Wind, another band that played regularly at the Boston Tea Party.
Thanks, Don. Really, I mean, the history here, you could go on and on. In terms of people who played here, an old friend is over there in the corner, and I'd like him to come up and say a few words. I don't think he needs much of introduction. Peter Wolf.
You have to introduce me.
All right, now let's all get together with a nice round of applause and welcome to Boston's one and only, the mighty Peter Wolf.
That was the shortest intro you ever did. Well, I'm just here to say that it's great to be here. I'd like to thank Steve and Don for allowing the Giles Band for using the Tea Party in here for our sort of rehearsal hall. And also Intermedia was the place where the Giles Band first made our first recording, little test recording. But I did play the Ark, did play this place, and for me, the great memories were having the eclectic talents. You know, Tommy was here, and The Who, and all these great bands, Fleetwood Mac, and Delaney and Bonnie, but for me, it was always Lonnie Mack, who no one really quite heard of, the Everly Brothers, who I ended up taking the girlfriend of the Devil's Disciple, which was not a wise move. But she told me she loved the Everly Brothers, so we came in during that sound check. And all during that sound check, it still amazes me today, they spent about an hour doing nothing but Beatles songs. And then went out and did all their great hits. And then, of course, Miles Davis playing here was quite a trip during the Bitches Brew Tour. But we had played here. It's great to see this plaque is well-deserved because this was a home to so many musicians in town and out. So it's great to see the Blaster, great to see Steve, my old friend Don Law, and even Dr. Beaver's here in the early part of the day. So thank you.
Well, as you know, this place went on after the Tea Party closed at the end of 1970, and you know, Don enumerated a lot of the clubs that were here. It's hard to remember them all, but there's always something going on. And you know, one of the people who had an opportunity to observe a lot of this, went to a lot of shows, played a lot of their music, is Carter Allen. So if you'll step up. We're jealous of the Tea Party.
Well, coming on after Peter Wolf, that's something. Hi, everybody. Nice to see you. Got pollen. I did come to Boston later. I did miss the glory years of the Tea Party. I certainly heard about it and knew about it. But certainly this place continued on after the Tea Party. It is an epicenter of music, always has been, and this plaque will continue that tradition. When I arrived in 1976, I was hired at BCN in '79, so I was actually perfectly poised for what happened after the Tea Party. And for some reason, I kept track of all the concerts I've ever been to. And recently, for a side project, I mean, since the first show I ever saw, which was James Gang when I was a kid, you know, one of those shows you're so young, where you're going, is that pot? That's what it smells like. Wow. You know, and waving a record in front of Joe Walsh's face, which is really stupid. But anyway, I kept track of all the shows I've been to, and recently for another project, I actually put them all in database, and for the first time ever, I have all of my shows I've been to in database. So I've been able to sort them and come up with some statistics for tonight. First of all, I've been to 325 shows in this building, which is probably not as much as Don Law or certainly the stage managers, but I spent a lot of my life in this place. And going back and looking through those records, I wanted to look through my records rather than the internet. I know everything's true on the internet, but I still wanted to try to reach for another source. Briefly, when this place went over to rock and roll, it was called 15 Lansdowne Street, just for a few months, from the fall of 1980 till January '81. Then it became the Metro, which it remained from February '81 all the way to 1989. Then there was a big renovation with a big new roof. It was City in 1989, and it remained City until the fall of '91 when it was renamed Avalon. And next door, of course, Spit was the club there, 1980 to 1987, and then Axis was 1987 on, and then the House of Blues came in February 19th, '09. I remember that night because I emceed, and I can't believe it was 5 years ago. When did that happen? You know? So the cool thing about coming here in this club, for me, this was even before BCM, was I was spinning punk rock, and this was a place, especially Spit, where bands who were coming over from England during that explosion of music, during the punk era and the new wave era, and bands working their way up through the Boston scene could play. It's a pretty small place, and as a DJ it was great because you could actually spin records there. We didn't have a place where you could actually, unless you were a dance jock, but as far as if you were a rock and roll punk jock, there was no place to play records. There was a place down in the financial zone called The Space, but they were only here for a little while. So it was very cool to come in as a DJ, play records till the band went on stage, and then when the bands got more of an audience, moved up, they would move next door and play Metro. And this place became the stepping stone between the Paradise and the Orpheum Theater. And I saw so many bands make that move through here. Some of the bands, I mean, there's so many bands that we saw here, but many of them post-1979 were legendary at the time. Many became legendary afterwards. One of the first shows I saw was in St. Patrick's Day, 1981. Prince played at Metro. It was his Dirty Mind tour. The entire audience was gay. There was no crossover yet. And within 5 minutes, he was stripped down to his G-string, dancing around on stage. You know, people don't react so much. You're not reacting so much because everybody goes out nude on stage now. But back in 1981, not too many people did it. That was an amazing show. And he would actually come back in 1986, which was a couple of years after Purple Rain. He was huge. He came back just to do a small room with The Revolution, which is one of those amazing shows where I was so psyched to have a ticket. I was walking down Lansdowne Street here, and someone offered me $500 in 1984 money. What is that, 20,000 now? No way I would give that ticket up. It was just one of those great shows you had to see, Prince and the Revolution. A lot of people forget. Yeah, he was.
The stage was this
The stage
high.
was that high, yeah.
Everybody.
You come in and the renovation happened, you'd be walking in, the stage is over there, now the stage is over here. It's like, what are they doing? Where? Yeah. And there was that crazy spiral thing that went up to the DJ booth, too. That was a lot of fun. A lot of people forget U2 played here at the Metro. It happened on May 28th, 1981. I remember that because I emceed that show. And the band hired a piper to bring them on stage. And I think it's the only time that U2 ever did I'm a Believer by the Monkees. I'm pretty sure it's the only time I think they decided they better not take that any further. But I got it on tape. It's pretty awesome. Some of the other bands, Stevie Ray Vaughan played here. And geez, I got to tell you, Stevie Ray Vaughan, he did a BCN show. We gave away the tickets. And so it was a smaller venue than what he had played before. So we gave away all the tickets. And Charles Lacrodere was going to MC the show, and I love Charles dearly. I love him. But sometimes, you know, he doesn't put two and two together. Might have had something to do with some of those magical substances from the Tea Party era. But you know, when a band says they've got their own guy that's going to introduce them, like they've got their own guy, that's okay. What you do is you go out 5 minutes before, because the boss always wants you to say the call letters at least 3 or 4 times. You know, WBCN, yes, WBCN, WBCN. So usually that's what you do. You go out and say, hey, everybody, 5 minutes, we're going to be doing a show, so go to the bathroom, get your drinks, and WBCN welcomes you to the show, and have a great night. Well, Charles decided he wanted to go up there when the lights went down, which means he was going to introduce the guy that was going to introduce Stevie Ray Vaughan. So if you can imagine, you're in the audience and you're like, Charles comes out going, how you doing, everybody? Hey, welcome, you know, having a good time tonight? Well, put your hands together for Pedro Martinez. And everybody in the audience is like, what? And then Pedro did his thing, and it was okay, but it was one of those wonderful Charles moments. Tool played here, Radiohead as well, Stray Cats, the Ramones. Eric Clapton did a show here. Even A Flock of Seagulls played here. Unbelievable, can you imagine that?
Played Iran 3 times.
With that?
They played Iran 3 times.
3 times, right.
Twice in a set, once as an encore.
You know, a lot of the English bands used to do their hit twice because they were used to doing that, or they didn't have enough music, so they had to do everything again. I remember, Tim, do you remember Johnny Cash? Playing, it was 1996. He played, it was a snowstorm. I remember we were over at BCN just hanging out, waiting until the show started, so we walked over, and I was amazed. There was, I don't know, 6 inches, foot of snow. I was like, there's no way they're doing a show tonight, but there it was. There was his black tour bus, the black 18-wheeler, the Man in Black, you know, June Carter, the Sons. They did the full show. And, you know, most of the people came out, no matter, you know, even though the snow was very deep, everybody came out. And it was just amazing. And I actually got backstage, and, you know, a lot of us here have met a lot of rock and roll people and stars, and you pretty much know what to say or say something anyway. But Cash was one guy where I just became like this 10-year-old child, you know, just like, help me, you know. And fortunately, there's some people that broke the ice, but he was a gentleman. He was awesome to meet. So, I mean, the range of groups that were in this club or these clubs was amazing. Johnny Cash to Susie and the Banshees, incredible. And probably the most energy I've ever witnessed in one enclosed space ever occurred on April 8th, 1992 over at Axis when Pearl Jam played. And I'm certain that the fire code was followed, and that there wasn't one extra person in that place, I'm sure, But everybody was hanging all over off the pipes, and it was just unbelievable. Pearl Jam, when you think about where they went, only weeks after that, it was amazing that they ever played a place like that. And then the WBCN Rumbles, finally. And a lot of you, or all of you, know what the BCN Rumbles were all about. Taking 24 Boston bands over 9 nights, 6 nights of preliminaries, 2 nights of semifinals, a night of finals, and finding the band. And it was great. And BCN did 9 Rumbles here from 1981 to 1989. We moved from the Rat over. I remember I ran the last Rumble at the Rat in 1980. And it was great to come over here, because I remember loading in for sound check. You used to have to be there when the bands were loading in. And I remember sitting at the back, looking out the back door. And the back door of the Rat would go out to that parking lot that faces the Mass Pike. And it was about, 4 in the afternoon. I was just sitting there. I was pretty tired, because if you were in charge, you were doing 9 nights, and so I was probably 5 or 6 nights into it, a little pie-eyed. And there's a pipe that runs over the doorway, and just like in the logo, this big-ass rat came walking out across the pipe while somebody was loading in underneath him. I went, wow, am I seeing another one? Another. It was like Elephant Walk with rats walking across. So it was very nice to come over here. So we had a great time here and used the different clubs and different permutations. It was a real endurance contest. It was a real endurance contest for the set crew, for the stage crew, for setting everything up. Because on the finals, you would have the 2 final bands, and to make it as fair as possible, you would do 2 alternating sets. Or you do one band and the next, and first band and the next. So each is doing a 45-minute set. So the crew really has to hustle, because then we have a special guest band playing afterwards. And while the guest band is on, the judges are upstairs deciding who won. And then when the guest band gets done, you announce the winner. And you don't want to go too late, or everybody starts leaving, and you don't have your big moment. So in this particular occasion, which is one of my favorite moments in this place, it was 1984. Joan Jett and the Blackhearts were the guest band, and the 2 finalists were the Schemers and Dub 7. They did their sets. They finished up. The judges went upstairs. Joan Jett and the Blackhearts. There's that room between Spit and Metro at the time, where the bands used to get ready, because oftentimes they use the upstairs at Spit as a backstage. And so everybody's getting ready. I think Carmine was the stage manager at the time. And everything kind of, was it you? Were you on that? Okay. So what happens is, the band's ready. You got Joan Jett and the Blackhearts, which is often hard to get the band out of the dressing room. You get them downstairs. They're all ready to go. The set's being changed on stage. They got Joan Jett and the Blackhearts. They got the drums set up. Everything's ready to go. The lights come down. They put on Joan Jett's introductory music. Everything's ready to go. The band included me in their high five, which is very cool. Whenever that happens, that's religious, You got to appreciate that. And so we're ready to go. And so the music they're playing is Won't Get Fooled Again. And Carmine's like, gives me he didn't have a flashlight. He just, or if you.
No, both of us. Carmine was there too. He's doing lights.
Go, time to go. Lights are down. Crowd's going crazy. Let's do this. And so Joan Jett, I moved to go. And she goes, no, don't go. I look at her. I go, oh. She goes, it Won't Get Fooled Again. I go, it's an 8-minute song. Right? We got to go out. She's like, no, you can't. We got to hear it all before we go. I'm like, okay, all right. And the stage managers are, let's do this. The lights are down. Of course, the audience, they clap so long, then they stop clapping. The lights are still down, but Joan Jett held out. She's like, no, we're going to hear the whole thing before we go on stage. And Roger Daltrey's scream in that song is probably the greatest scream in all of rock and roll. And at the end of it, to see Joan Jett over there with her guitar on, which is not plugged in yet, doing the big Pete Townsend windmill and jumping up and down and looking at me and saying, now we go. It was one of the great moments on a legendary night in a place that had many legendary nights, and it deserves being commemorated. So thank you very much.
Well, we could go on and on and on, but now we've got to the moment where we're going to unveil the marker. You'll see that there are a lot of names of different bands on there. You know, as you were going through your litany, I said, oh, gee, we should have put them on there. We should have put them on. It's impossible. 325 shows, is that? I think that's the record. But this place has been a remarkable center, not only for the music going on in this building, but as a result of it, this whole part of town became a whole entertainment district. You know, beyond baseball, which is, you know, entertaining in its own right. It certainly has been in the last few years, more so maybe than in the past. This is a blow-up. This is not the actual marker. This is 2 feet by 2 feet. The marker is a foot square, and that's not an accident, because the dimensions of the actual marker, a foot by foot, is the size of an LP sleeve. And many of us remember LP sleeves. In fact, they're coming back. Okay. A former taxi garage behind Fenway Park became the center of a thriving nightlife district. Transformed in January 1969 into multimedia space, the Ark. It reopened in July as the Boston Tea Party when Ray Reapin, we got his name on there, moved that club here from the South End. Tea Party manager Don Law presented a who's who of music legends, and most of these people we've already touched on tonight. And these are ABC, get it? The Allman Brothers, the Byrds, Eric Clapton, to the Who, Neil Young, and Frank Zappa, and you know, a million groups in between. By 1971, the Tea Party closed. The room was a disco before impresario Patrick Lyons opened the Metro Sped complex. Over the years, it became City, Access, and Avalon, and plus the ancillary clubs in the neighborhood. That's not in the market, that's my comment. You run out of words here. With performances by Bob Dylan, Lou Reed, Elvis Costello, Sonic Youth, Mission of Burma, Pearl Jam, Radiohead, Coldplay. Rihanna actually played Avalon on the way up. I don't think she'll be back in the future. And Dropkick Murphys, of course.
Adele.
In 2009, the old building was replaced with the new House of Blues, which Law opened with Tea Party favorites, the Jay Giles Band. And that really brings the story around. As I say in Hollywood, that's the story arc. So there you have it. Thank you.
Aloha, we're at the Lansdowne Street Marker Celebration with Tim Jackson.
Hello, camera, people.
Tim was a key component. Let's just say Tim knows a lot about this street, this strip, and the music scene, going all the way back to Intermedia.
Yeah, well, you know, I've played so many clubs here with so many different acts, and I can't really remember the variations sometimes. I actually worked as an actor at Mamakins. Remember when Mamakins was in here?
I built that.
Yeah, and it was the first play. I was in a theater company at the time and playing music. And the theater company, we did the first show at Mamakins. Didn't last very long. But the Intermedia story, I was in a band in Rhode Island, and we were like the biggest band in Rhode Island, but we came to Boston to record. And it was early Intermedia, and our engineer sitting in his sunglasses looking really cool was Martin Mull.
So let me just guess, what's your favorite band that you played with here? That you were in, not this one you hung out with.
You know, it's probably Robin Lane and the Chartbusters. I mean, we did so many gigs, so many tours, so many shows here, such wonderful crowds, and it's got such a great history, and I finally made a movie of her life, and so that's a fond piece of history for me. And some of the other acts I thought were fantastic, but you know what happens?
It was great.
They come and they go.
You did lunchtime shows here for the radio station.
Yeah, right.
Several of those. I think that was also a different type of thing that this place had.
Yeah.
At noon, they were drunk and partying hardy.
Right.
And I think Robin played several of those.
Yeah, we did a lot. We did so many of those things. Even Spit and all of that crazy stuff. And Jerry Wexler came down to see us here, the legendary Jerry Wexler, and you know. Yeah, I mean, if I think about all of the different clubs and all the different situations and all the different kinds of shows and venues and reasons to have shows, it kind of mind-blowing.
Okay, so when was the last time you played Lansdowne Street? Was that last week or last year?
I don't know. We did.
You did the House of Blues here with that event, one of the big events.
Yeah, it was a BCN. I think it was fundraiser for the documentary that Bill is doing on BCM.
Right, I remember
That's
that
what it
show.
was.
That was
That's what it
super.
was.
Yeah,
that was a fun
really,
show. Yeah. So most of the revival stuff, I think, tends to be Robin Lane.
Yep,
You know.
Robin Lane, the Chartbusters. You should check it out if you haven't seen it, heard it, do it. The documentary's called?
Oh, the documentary is called When Things Go Wrong, the Robin Lane story.
Check it out. It's definitely not boring. Guaranteed.
And it's got a good history, a huge arc of music history through it. We passed through the Boston scene. Yeah. So.
Never to disappear, but always to keep coming back. You're like a phoenix.
Yeah. And there's Dinky Dawson.
And Dinky's there.
I think I played with Tom Rush. Dinky was always doing the sound.
Dinky is the greatest sound guy. We should talk to him. You want to get...
I got to say hi to Dinky, yeah.
Here's When Things Go Wrong by Robin Lane and the Chartbusters.
When things go wrong, don't walk away. That'll only make it harder. While you want to run away, that won't get you any farther. I don't know how to do any more for you. You say I don't love you enough. Ooh, I can hardly satisfy, but I know you're needing so much.
That was When Things Go Wrong by Robin Lane and the Chartbusters, featuring Tim Jackson on drums.
You can remember me?
Hello, Tim Jackson.
It was
Turn around, look
Tom
at the
Rush.
camera.
We worked with Tom Rush together.
Yeah, you guys did Tom Rush together. Now, Dinky, for example, was the competitor. Dinky ran the channel sound, and we had a friendly relationship where I could go to the channel anytime I wanted, and Dinky can walk in here anytime he wanted. When did you used to come here? Before you worked the channel? Before I was born?
No, 1969, as soon as it opened, we came with Fleetwood Mac.
That's right, Dinky, you were the sound man for the Byrds and Fleetwood Mac.
And Marshall Goldberg was our sound man, because Marshall built a lot of stuff for us. And I just toured with him today. He's still around. He's in Oregon right now. And we're doing some sound stuff that we can get together again.
Can I do a piece of sound history? Remember Bill Reisman?
Yeah. Bill Reisman.
Tell us about Bill.
Well, Bill Reisman, 1972, I took all his stuff down out of the studio, 16-track recorder, and DBX down to Sing Sing Prison. And I recorded Joan Baez live in Sing Sing Prison, and I actually tapped the electricity off the electric chair to drive the 16-track and all the DBX.
It must have been a killer sound.
It was killer, all right, because the head electrician was a murderer, and he was wonderful. He wouldn't go out back to he wouldn't go back into the Harlem, he said, because he says they'll kill him. He says, I'd rather live here. And he says, that's what I do. And he walks around with all the keys, and he also had a bundle of electric wire and everything, and he hooked us up. Good. And Bill Reisman stuff, he did that for me in this place with Fleetwood Mac in 1970 when we recorded it. And
Boston live at the Tea Party, Fleetwood Mac live at the Tea Party record.
I recorded with him in his house when it was Angus Studios in like 69, 68.
Yeah.
And he disappeared.
Yeah.
His demise is a strange story in itself.
I have no idea.
Oh, you don't know the story?
Are we going to get this story?
He was designing things for the government. And his son Sean is still around. I always wondered, wonderful guy who was a roadie. Bill disappeared swimming down in South America. They never found
that's
him.
Right. I remember doing
Yeah, very strange. And it was in the Globe, and I read this and I went, Bill Reisman, really?
Look, we've had a lot of wonderful rock and roll musicians here, and also the backline guys.
Yeah, backline guys.
Do you remember Carrot from Shannon-Hour, the redhead roadie from Shannon-Hour that used to come through? Well, Carrot, when they went down to Costa Rica, Carrot came back, and 3 days later he died. Because it's that, infective disease thing that you get, flesh-eating bacteria, whatever it was. But these were the characters that were here in this town. There's some wonderful characters
Bird
still
Ouellette,
in this town,
Bird
like
Ouellette.
you guys.
Bird, one of the greats, Bird Ouellette.
There was
should be here.
Weisberg, well, yeah, but Marshall Goldberg was the key before you came, before I came. in this building, and I'm going to tell him tonight that we've been on and talked about him. In fact, Charlie was talking about him, and he's going to love it.
I mean, most people that go to a show don't even realize what it takes to make that sound something that they appreciate. The musicians, the tech guys, the lifters, the schleppers, they don't understand.
They don't understand it.
They
And
just
the
want a
roadies.
perfect, yeah.
The roadies are good.
But you know, you've got to see the new roadies. I've got them on my website. They're this big. They're 7 and 8 years old. They've been pushing this stuff around in England for years. One was truck driving and everything. He was up there on the truck driving, and the girls pushing all the gear. Yeah, it's the new band of roadies. They've got the ears in, the damn earrings, and all this stuff. I'm like,
and read Dinky's book.
Yeah, read Dinky's book.
Read his book. The life on the road, the adventures of Dinky Dawson with Carter Allen as my co-writer. So Carter, in fact, it's coming out as an ebook soon, and also an audio book.
You're gonna speak your life.
I'm going to speak it. I'm audioing it. I'm going to make everybody laugh.
And then everyone's gonna have to figure out what you're saying.
Exactly. That's the whole thing.
It's the first subtitled audiobook. Yeah.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Hey, whatever it takes to have some fun and everybody have a laugh.
Well, I tell you, this scene owes a lot to the technology that was developed during that time period. Not only just in equipment that was being made, because Berkeley was a test place for drums and guitars and amps and all the guys who were building that stuff, but you take Bill Hanley and you take you and you take many of these people in this scene that helped create the future of what our sound is like.
That's exactly right. The only thing is they've gone past it now because of the digital boards. They don't have the humanness that we have. And you know, and we're talking about Bill Rising, we're talking about people, we're talking about Marshall. These are people, not machines. We invented them machines.
There's a thing called a human feel.
And that's what's
And it's
missing
just-
today.
Yeah.
Sorry, live shows are not as good as what we had when we were here or any other place that a live person mixes.
And that's what this is about. It's about live.
They
live
don't
playing.
mix it. Press the button and go. And everything's on the computer. I'm sorry, but I don't go to those shows. Even my friends that has them shows, I won't go. I don't like the sound. If I don't like the sound, I ain't going anyhow. So why?
Well, I guess we were lucky to experience it as it happened.
You better believe it.
And now it's all recorded.
So how many nights were you here at this place?
I worked here straight from like 1984 to 1991. I probably produced at least 500 shows here. And then Timmy McKenna took over. He was at the Paradise.
That's right.
My favorite show here was probably the weirdest night. We had Leonard Cohen at Metro, sold out, all seats on the ground, and he was very quiet. He would do Suzanne, really quiet. And next door at Spit was Nirvana, and you could hear it through the wall. And Leonard Cohen says, "Get that crap off or I'm not going on stage." So I had to kind of go back and forth. Nirvana's set ended, Leonard would start. It's like, ah. But I remember great shows like Prince that Carter was talking about on a little stage 3 feet high. And Prince is in a jock strap and goes out into the audience. What are you supposed to do?
We had the same stuff going on over the channel. It was interesting. I got so fed up of Gibby from Butthole Surfers. He set fire to my stage. I threw him right out the back door. Right out the fire exit. We had and his drum kit and everything. They put lighter fluid on top of the cymbal, set fire to it, lit it. So it went everywhere. Are you kidding me? The guy's playing to this guy getting his thing chopped off on the wall, and I'm saying to myself, this is a bit much. Music was pretty decent, but then after they did that, and the girl peed in the cup, in the bucket, and drank it, and then they set fire to my stage, I says, that's it. Out the back door with his guitar.
We didn't allow that here. We did have things like the Red Hot Chili Peppers decided they were going to play an hour after the show, the place closed.
My Sunday afternoon band. I got them, what was it, 5 pairs of tube socks? That was my on the road thing. Lemmy. I got Lemmy something. Lemmy wanted food, and then he says, I want a woman. I want this, I want that. So I got one of my bouncers who owns a marital aid store in town to come out, and we got all these dildos. and they were moving on a silver plate. I took them to Lenny. This is your dinner, Lemmy. And these dildos are moving everywhere. Lemmy and Benoit balls.
That was not on Lancet Street. That was at the channel. Yeah.
That was
just put it out. We had a little different outfit here. We did have the human sexual response excitement going every time they would show up here. That was
hey,
like...
you talk about the Lancet Street. This was the full gay side. So that kind of raw, old-style, sexy stuff was channel-oriented more than...
That's right. You had the Meat Man. You had all the insaneness. All that kind of stuff.
All the weird stuff.
We had, in a sense, we had the big acts that would normally be playing the Centrum. They would come here and play because this was cool. Well, Clapton did 3 nights. The Allman Brothers did 3 or 4 nights, and when they were at the top of their field. And
you get people like Wendy O.
I got to run. We'll be back. Tim Jackson, Dinky Dawson, stay well, and we'll be right back.
Here's Jackie Onassis from the Human Sexual Response.
I want to be Jackie Onassis. I want to wear a pair of dark sunglasses. I want to be Jackie Onassis, oh yeah. Oh yeah. I want bodyguards all around. I'm anxious to avoid an autograph hound. I want to be Jackie Onassis, oh yeah. Oh yeah.
That was Jackie Onassis from the Human Sexual Response.
Sam's going to tell a story about Aerosmith.
So first of all, I don't know if earlier we went all the way back to the early Tea Party days when.
No, I'm only from 83 to 84 is when I started.
Yeah. Well, just very quickly, first year I remember Grateful Dead here, and needless to say, the Punch Bowl, and I was kind of naive, and I'm like, I didn't know about the Punch Bowl yet, so I took a couple of big swigs, and I don't remember anything after that, but it was a great Grateful Dead experience. I'm thinking about Aerosmith, 1984. By that time, I wasn't working directly for BCN anymore. I had Starfleet, and we were producing all of the live concert broadcasts, always working with you guys, with the bus. So we were doing this Aerosmith live, and I think it was actually Valentine's Day. It was in any case February of '84. And it wasn't just on BCN, it was like a national network. Now, when you do a single station broadcast, the show can start loosey-goosey. You can start 5 minutes early, 5 minutes late, whatever. But when you're going national, you got to be on the clock. 10 minutes before airtime, we suddenly realized nobody knows where Tyler is. Everybody's panicking. Everybody on the whole crew is running all over the whole building trying to find Steven.
We were calm, but you guys were panicking.
Right.
We didn't have a time frame. You did.
Yeah, that's right. So, ultimately, Bobby DeMuth, my engineer, who's the best live mixer going, opens a closet door, and there's Tyler, kind of slumped down on the floor in his lame pants and, bare top, and his boa constrictor wrapped around him. So he got up, he did a great show. It was a great live broadcast.
Almost on time.
We got on time.
Yeah, 15 or 30 seconds off, wasn't it? It was just so close.
It was tight, but it was right.
It was right, and it rocked, too.
Right.
I mean, that's the best thing about some of the things that happened here that were tied into radio stations that wouldn't have happened any other way. But to have a venue like this where they felt comfortable playing, knowing that you're going to get it out to the world correctly.
Yeah, there you go. Well, I thank you. The whole mission was getting live stuff from where it's happening out to the world simultaneously. There's nothing like the spontaneity of live. Artists usually do better shows when they know they're going out to the world. The adrenaline, the whole thing.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
And what I don't remember is what the club was called at that time.
Metro. We were Metro.
It was Metro then?
Yeah, Metro at that time.
Because when was Boston? It was...
Till 1981.
Okay, all right. Okay.
So, and realistically, Patrick's vision of Metro was a disco where he could have the best rock bands play.
Also, sure.
Because that was, to me, the fun of being here.
Absolutely.
Frankie Goes to Hollywood one night.
Yeah.
What's his name from Joe Strummer the next night?
The Clash.
But I mean, Joe Strummer's band.
And Mescaleros.
Dynamite.
Mescaleros.
Okay. Yeah, BAD. It'd be like, what the heck? These are two bands that, why are they both selling out this club? Well, it's obvious why Joe would, but what, you know, Frankie goes, it was just a nightmare. It was crazy. It was really hysterical.
Yeah.
But that's what the diversity of the club scene here was. We had sometimes in one night 8 bands, you know, 4 here, 3 at Spit, 2 upstairs at Deviate,
Right.
and, you know, woo, crazy.
A magical address, for sure.
15 Lansdowne, be here. Thanks, Sam.
Thank you. Thank you.
Cool?
Yeah, excellent.
All right.
Excellent. I'm just going to zoom in on this plaque.
Thanks for listening to Rat Tales, Boston Rock Stories. Rat Tales is produced and directed by Lenny Scolletta and Mike Hoban, with a huge thanks to Medford Community Media in beautiful downtown Medford, Massachusetts.